This is Steve Hannley.
And Thomas Ella.
And tonight we're talking about the game of the week. Transformers Devastation.
Is this already game of the week? Have we already decided?
We should do a game of the week, actually. That'd be really cool. I mean, we have game of the month, game of the week. We could do game of the day. I mean, there's like a million indie games now anyway.
Well, I'm cool with Transformers winning it because it's pretty rad.
All right, I need a 2,000-word article in the next 10 minutes, actually. It's getting kind of late, about why it's the game of the day.
Okay.
Let's just talk about it here.
It came out today.
So it's a Platinum game, or I should say PlatinumGames, because there's no space in between those two words, is there?
No, I had to look that up. Because, I mean, who does that? Why would they style it like that? But
it is strange. Now, usually when there's a new Platinum game, it's cause for celebration, right? I mean, they've had some of the best games, I think, of the generation, right? Vanquish, Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising Revengeance even, or Revengeance, whatever it's called. But they kind of hit a little bit of a skid last year because they did The Legend of Korra. Now, The Legend of Korra was a licensed property from Activision, and guess what? Transformers Devastation is a licensed property from Activision. So a lot of people
licensed title, no less.
That's right, which is a little more cause for concern. So people, yes, were worried, and sure enough, Activision seemed a little bit worried too because no review copies went out until the day of, in fact the morning of, I think about around 11 o'clock. And I think people were dreading it, but Thomas, he just barreled through the whole game all day long, and you were surprised about how good it was.
Yeah, I think that game is pretty rad. I was not expecting it to be rad, but I mean they bring their PlatinumGames trademark of quality to the combat. It's like Bayonetta combat, but with Transformers. You don't get much better than that.
That is the single coolest thing I've ever heard.
There are robot dinosaurs in this game.
Oh my god.
Like, you can play as a robot dinosaur.
You just sold like a million copies of this game, Thomas.
I know. How is that not just the tagline in the front of the box?
That should be the quote.
You can play as Grimlock. He turns into a robot dinosaur. All right, it's $50.
And there's Constructicons too in the game, isn't that right?
There are Constructicons, and they have the coolest like robot hair. This like greaser style. It's pretty fantastic.
Greaser style robot hair. That's another quote for the box right there.
And they call Optimus Prime an auto jerk, which I thought was the funniest line. They do a really good job with this game. It keeps up with the style of the old cartoon as opposed to that Michael Bay stuff.
So it is not a Michael Bay adaptation.
It is thankfully not a Michael Bay adaptation.
Okay. Woo. So no Mark Wahlberg.
No Mark Wahlberg and no Shia LaBeouf.
Well, that's actually kind of a shame. Shia LaBeouf is a gift to our generation.
If you say so.
But hey, it has Soundwave, and Soundwave is almost as cool. Not quite as artsy and not quite as smart, but almost as cool as Shia. Now, the game is cel-shaded, is that right?
It is cel-shaded. That is something that I always find is hit or miss. I mean, like, we just had Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 that, slapped a cel-shaded filter over it and didn't look very good. But Transformers Devastation actually looks really, really good for its cel-shaded look. The environments aren't the most detailed, but overall, the Transformers themselves look incredible. I mean, they look like you're watching a cartoon, and of course that's cliche at this point because games look good, but it's so rare when they actually hit the style of a cartoon or an anime like a Dragon Ball Z game or Transformers in this case. It looks really nice.
Now, how does the game sound? Do we have any of the original voice actors like Peter Cullen returning?
Yeah, a bunch of the voice actors return. I don't know if everyone is from the original cast, but the big hitters you'd want to be there are there. It feels like they're trying to make an episode, or in this case, like a season of the old show, full of, cheesy dialogue, full of, overdone voice acting. It's not something that you maybe want in other games, but in this game it works perfectly.
And are there some pretty sweet tunes to jam out to in the background?
The tunes are amazing.
Oh,
Just hair metal guitar licks.
yes.
All over. The whole time you're playing, it's just guitar solos all day. It's beautiful.
Is the game then, is it over the top? I mean, is it aware that it's crazy and zany and all of that?
Well, the Transformers don't know that, which is, I think, the right way to do it. This is standard business for them, you know. Megatron is up to his usual, I want to destroy the world or whatever. But for them, it's kind of business as usual. But for you as the player, it starts kind of, you know, grounded, but in classic Platinum Games fashion, it gets pretty crazy by the end. It's a really kinetic game, is how I'd probably put it.
Is it difficult? I know some Platinum games can be kind of tough.
It starts out, and I gotta say, I thought it was going to be kind of like a baby version of a Platinum's game at first. Like, oh, this is a Transformers game, it's for kids. The early levels are super easy, but then the second you start to get lazy, they start ramping up the difficulty like crazy. Pretty soon, some of the boss fights, I mean, you're going to need to really master some of the game's mechanics. You're going to want to actually delve into all the different systems the game has, you know, develop better weapons, level up your Transformers, pick who has the best style. You're going to need to really invest in the game to actually do well.
Yeah, you know, it's funny because you mentioned how a lot of people could think it was a kiddie game. And I'll be honest with you, by looking at the box art, it kind of seems like it's a kid's game. I mean, it looks like it's kind of just sloppy, photoshopped, has a lot of bright colors, a big logo. It kind of looks like a shovelware game meant for kids. Do you think it's possible that Activision even didn't really know how great of a game they had on their hands?
I think Activision probably as a publisher doesn't really care that much, and that's probably why you're not seeing that much marketing for it. You're probably not going to see, you know, Transformers ads on, you know, in New York City plastered on billboards or anything. But Platinum Games, it felt like they took it seriously, and it felt like a labor of love for them. You know, just to get the original voice actors to nail the look, to figure out a way to make a fighting style that is true to the abilities of the actual Transformers you're playing as. It feels like Platinum Games cared, and maybe Activision just wasn't sure how well it would actually do, which is probably not a bad assumption, honestly, given that the previous Transformers games from other developers haven't been quite as stellar.
So how many Transformers can you play as, or what are the most crucial ones to the experience?
You can play as 5, but I mean, really, let's be honest, you're going to play as Grimlock because he can turn into a dinosaur, or you're going to play as Bumblebee because he's fast. I mean, you could play as Optimus Prime, I guess, but he's kind of boring in the context of a robot dinosaur.
Right. It doesn't get much more boring than that. Now, does Bumblebee turn into a Camaro in this game, or is it the kind of the old school Volkswagen Beetle?
It's the old school Volkswagen, which
okay.
I liked. I like that they brought that back.
Yeah, I feel like they try to kind of, because even in the Michael Bay Transformers movie, right? They explain that he was always a Camaro, just an old Camaro. So I feel like they try to update it and make it a little more masculine for the new generation. But I agree with you that it's nice to go back to the roots, even though, you know, I don't know, it's probably not a good thing he's a Volkswagen. He might kind of pollute a lot.
Yeah, the only thing they really update about the look of the Transformers is that they seem a lot shinier than I remember them. They kind of added this weird like shine effect on them, but it looks pretty good. It makes it seem a little more modern. You know, not as flat and kind of boring as the original style might have looked in today's world. So it's actually a welcome change, because it simply feels like they added something new over something old, as opposed to just missing the look completely.
That's funny, because I remember back in the old days when Transformers were a toy. I don't want to date myself here, right? But it seems like the knockoffs were always shiny. Do you know what I mean? They had like just a bunch of like random chrome plating and like shiny purple on them to be like, hey, yeah, we're not Transformers, but look how bright and colorful we are.
Chrome was in back then. You know?
That's true. Chrome was in. So I guess they're just kind of going back to their 80s roots. Now, how long would you say the experience of the game is?
I had heard it was going to be shorter than I guess it felt like it was. I mean, of course, when you play everything in one sitting, it's hard to tell how long something really is, but it to me it felt like the right length. I probably would have gotten bored with it if it had gone on much longer, and it didn't leave me wanting. So I felt like it was a good length. Probably took me maybe somewhere between like 6 to 8 hours, something around there.
That's not bad. I mean, I think Metal Gear could be beaten in about 4 if you were good at the game, which I was not, to put it lightly. It took me about 30.
I'm sure people can beat Transformers a lot sooner than that, but there's a decent, especially if you're a fan of Platinum Games, there's a decent sense of replayability of, well, I want to go back and I want to play it on harder difficulties where I can carry my weapons over, I can carry my experience over, I can have a harder difficulty setting. It'll remix the enemies. There's a lot of longevity to the experience. I didn't really have time to go through and play the game a second or a third time, but it felt like a game where I wouldn't mind jumping back in occasionally just to hop around as a Transformer and slow down time and hit dudes as a semi or as a Volkswagen or something. It's just a purely enjoyable experience.
I don't think it's going to be hard to hit people with a Volkswagen right now. But so you mentioned that there is good replay value. Is that just from repeating the main campaign, or is there like arenas and stuff like that you can just jump back into and get into the action?
There are side missions in the game during the campaign that you don't really need to engage in, and for the most part I didn't, because they did not seem especially interesting. But there are challenges. I think there's about 50 challenges outside of the main campaign, so if you're into that, you can definitely jump in, and they'll give you different objectives like a race here, or defeat all the Decepticons here, or here's some Insecticons to kill, or you can just jump back into the main campaign at a harder difficulty with all your items. So they give you reasons to jump back in kind of all the facets that the game has to offer.
Now, you mentioned in your review that one thing you were critical of was the fact that the weapon system was a little bit, I don't want to say bad, but you kind of just feed crappy weapons into good weapons or something like that?
Yeah, it just seems a little cumbersome. You collect a lot of weapons, and a lot of them are the same weapons you've collected, but at a lower level. So the way you upgrade weapons and make them stronger is you take let's say you have a sword and you want to upgrade it further because you like that sword. So you can go through and you can feed the lower quality weapons you have to that sword and make it better. You can imbue it with different abilities. It's a kind of interesting system, just in the sense that you might be able to customize it, but honestly, they would have had a much easier time if they had just done something a little more standard, like having an upgrade tree for the weapon, or just the weapons you use will upgrade on their own, just depending on your use of them. It just felt like it was kind of a waste of time to have to go between levels and feed all the old weapons to my new weapon.
Now, is this a game you'd like to see Platinum make a franchise out of?
I would definitely like to see them make another one. They definitely leave the door open for another one, and I would absolutely love to see them make a game that Activision can put a little more confidence in. I guess it all depends on the sales of this game, but it's like, I would say it's 100% worth a person's time if they're either into Platinum games, or they're into action games, or they're just into Transformers. It's a really good all-around experience. And if somebody's concerned about the length, I would just say rent it. You can probably get all you really want out of it in the first playthrough, but if you're really passionate about it and you really enjoy the combat system, then it's worth replaying.
And that experience can be had right now on PC, PlayStation 3, PlayStation 4, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. So it's on last gen too, actually. I just did not realize that.
Yeah, I think that art style would probably transfer over pretty well.
Yeah, because you can be a little bit pixely, and you can get away with it. Unless you're Tony Hawk Pro Skater 5, but...
In which case, no, you can't get away with anything, really, it seems.
Well, you can go check out Thomas's Transformers Devastation review right now on hardcoregamer.com.